Continuing our series on finger analysis, remember all those fascinating connections we found between finger length and athletic ability and personality traits.
Right.
Well, today we're diving into a study that asks whether your finger length could predict your risk of heart disease. I know it sounds a little out there, right?
It does seem like a stretch, but there's a growing body of research exploring the link between finger length and various health outcomes.
Okay, so this study we're looking at is titled Correlation Between Second to Fourth Digit Ratio and Anthropometric Variables Indicative of Cardiovascular Disease. And it focuses specifically on young women.
Okay.
Before we get into the details, can you remind us what this whole 2D.40 ratio thing is all about?
Of course, the 2D.40 ratio is simply the length of your index finger, which is referred to as the second digit, or 2D, divided by the length of your ring finger, the fourth digit, or 4D. It's called sexually dimorphic because men and women typically have different ratios.
So what causes these differences in finger length between men and women?
It all goes back to hormones, specifically prenatal exposure to testosterone. Higher testosterone levels in the womb usually lead to a lower 2D.4D ratio.
Hold on, you're saying that my finger length was influenced by hormones before I was even born?
Exactly. Finger length is primarily determined during fetal development, and those prenatal hormone levels can have lasting effects on our bodies throughout life.
That's wild. But how does finger length connect to heart health? It feels like we're making a giant leap here.
Well, consider the roles testosterone and estrogen play in our bodies. They influence things like where we store fat, and body fat distribution is directly linked to cardiovascular risk. The study we're looking at today explored those connections.
You mean like where you carry your weight can actually affect your heart health?
Precisely. And there's been some fascinating research on men showing a link between lower 2D.40 ratios and the age of their first heart attack. Men with lower ratios tend to have their first heart attack later in life.
So in that case, a lower ratio might actually be a good thing.
Potentially, but it's not quite that straightforward. This study focused specifically on young women in Haryana, India, and took a slightly different approach.
What did they look at?
They examined the 2D.40 ratio alongside a variety of body measurements like height, weight, BMI, waist circumference, hip circumference, and something particularly interesting, neck circumference.
Why neck circumference? What does that tell us about heart health?
It might seem surprising, but neck circumference is actually a pretty good indicator of body fat, especially visceral fat, the kind that accumulates around your organs. And that type of fat is linked to a higher risk of heart problems. It's a simple measurement that can provide valuable insights into potential cardiovascular risk.
So the researchers were basically trying to see if there's a connection between the 2D.40 ratio and these body measurements, especially neck circumference, in these young women.
Exactly. They wanted to explore whether finger length could be an early indicator of potential heart health issues.
And what did they find? Was there a clear connection?
Well, that's where things get a bit more complex. While they observed some positive correlations between the 2D.40 ratio and certain risk factors, the results weren't statistically significant.
Hold on, back up for a second. What does statistically significant even mean?
It's a way of determining whether the results of a study are likely due to a real effect or just random chance. If a finding is statistically significant, it means the researchers are confident that the observed relationship is not just a fluke.
So in this case, they saw a correlation, but they're not sure if it's a real connection or just a coincidence.
Exactly. It could be that other factors are at play or that the sample size was too small to detect a subtle but real link. And that's precisely why further research is needed.
It's like having a glimpse of a pattern, but you need more data to see the full picture.
A perfect analogy. And this is where the scientific process truly shines. Each study builds upon the last, gradually refining our understanding.
So where do we go from here? Should we be measuring our fingers and freaking out?
Definitely not. It's important to remember that this study is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And it focused on a specific population, young women in Haryana, India. The results may not be generalizable to other groups.
So we need more research with diverse populations to see if these findings hold up.
Absolutely, and that's a crucial point. Representation in research is essential to ensure that our findings are applicable to everyone.
Okay, so no need to panic about our finger length. But this deep dive has definitely uncovered some intriguing connections between prenatal hormones and our health, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It highlights the complex and often hidden ways our early development can influence our well-being throughout life. And that's what makes this field so fascinating. It's full of potential for groundbreaking discoveries.
It's amazing to think that something as seemingly simple as finger length could offer clues about our health. It's like our bodies are constantly sending us messages if we know how to read them.
That's a great way to put it. And this study underscores the fact that our health is shaped by a myriad of factors, some of which are determined even before we're born.
Speaking of those factors, you mentioned earlier that the study looked at several body measurements. Let's dive into those a bit more. They measured things like waist circumference, hip circumference, and you said neck circumference was particularly interesting.
Yes, because it's a surprisingly accurate indicator of body fat distribution, particularly visceral fat, which is the fat stored around your internal organs.
And that's bad for your heart.
Visceral fat is more metabolically active than subcutaneous fat, the fat just under your skin, and is linked to a higher risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, and other health problems.
So a larger neck circumference could be a sign of increased visceral fat and therefore a high risk.
That's right. It's a simple measurement that can provide valuable insights into your overall health. And what's intriguing is that this study found a positive correlation between neck circumference and the 2D.40 ratio in these young women, although, again, it wasn't statistically significant.
So another piece of the puzzle, but not a definitive answer.
Exactly. But it raises some interesting questions about the potential role of prenatal hormones in shaping not only our finger length, but also our body fat distribution and ultimately our risk for certain health conditions.
It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion, getting closer and closer to the core of how our bodies work.
Right.
And this study is just one layer, right?
Right. It's a reminder that we're still learning so much about human biology, and there are countless mysteries yet to be uncovered.
It's exciting and a little daunting at the same time.
It is, but that's what makes science so captivating. It's a journey of exploration and discovery, and with each new study, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Speaking of exploration, this study focused on young women in Haryana, India. Why that specific population? Does it limit the applicability of the findings?
That's an important point to address. Studying specific populations can provide valuable insights, but it also means the results may not be generalizable to other groups. Factors like genetics, lifestyle, and environment can all influence health outcomes, and what holds true for one group may not apply to another.
So we need more studies in diverse populations to see if these findings hold up across the board.
Absolutely. And that's why representation in research is so crucial. We need to include people of different ages, genders, ethnicities, and backgrounds to get a truly comprehensive understanding of human health and disease.
That makes perfect sense. So we can't definitively say that finger length predicts heart disease, but this study does give us some intriguing clues about the potential role of prenatal hormones in shaping our health.
Exactly. And it underscores the importance of further research to explore these connections in greater detail.
I'm already eager to see what future studies reveal.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think it's this: stay curious, stay informed, and take care of your health. While this study doesn't provide all the answers, it highlights the fascinating connections between our biology and our well-being. It's a reminder that our bodies are constantly revealing information about ourselves, and it's up to us to pay attention and make choices that support our long-term health.
Beautifully said. And that's a perfect note to end this part of our deep dive. So we've been talking about this fascinating research on finger length and heart health, and it really makes you think.
Yeah, it challenges our assumptions about what we can learn from something as simple as the length of our fingers.
Exactly. And even though this particular study didn't find a statistically significant link between finger length and heart disease risk, it definitely opens up some really intriguing questions.
Absolutely. It raises the question of, well, can we use something like finger length to identify people who might be at higher risk for heart disease? And if so, what can we do to help those people?
That's a great point. It could have major implications for preventative care.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine being able to personalize preventative strategies based on something as easy to measure as finger length.
Okay, so before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back to this study. What were some of the key takeaways?
Well, one of the most interesting things they found was this connection between the 2D.40 ratio and neck circumference in these young women.
Right, you talked about that earlier, but it wasn't statistically significant, so what does that really tell us?
Well, it's not proof of a direct link, but it's a strong hint that there could be something going on. It suggests that prenatal hormone exposure, which we know influences finger length, might also play a role in body fat distribution. And we know that body fat, especially the kind that accumulates around your organs, is a major risk factor for heart disease.
So it's like another piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture.
Exactly. It's adding to our understanding of how all these different factors interact to influence our health.
Okay, so where do we go from here? What kind of research needs to be done to really explore this connection between finger length and heart health?
Well, first of all, we need more studies with larger and more diverse groups of people. This study focused on young women in Haryana, India. So we need to see if these findings hold up in other populations: men, older adults, people from different ethnic backgrounds.
Wait, because what applies to one group might not apply to another.
Exactly. And to really understand the connection, we need to go beyond just observing correlations. We need to figure out the biological mechanisms involved. How exactly do those prenatal hormones influence finger length and heart development?
Hmm. So much more to learn. It's amazing to think how much information is hidden within our own bodies, just waiting to be discovered.
Yeah, it's like we're just scratching the surface. And who knows what other insights we'll uncover as we continue to explore the mysteries of human biology.
This has been a fascinating deep dive. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we wrap up?
Well, I think the key takeaway is, well, our health is complex and influenced by a wide range of factors, many of which, like finger length, we might not even realize are connected. It's a reminder to be proactive about our health, to pay attention to the signals our bodies are sending us.
Great advice. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe to unlock your mind for more fascinating deep dives into the world of science and knowledge. We're always exploring new and thought-provoking topics, so join us next time as we unlock even more mysteries together.